of the Milk City Council to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Would Councilmember Duque please lead us?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Holtzclaw,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Vanel,
Here.
Councilmember Cavalieri,
Here.
or Steckler, Councilmember Allison,
Here.
Councilmember Duque,
Here.
Councilmember Paddock.
Present.
Councilmember Steckler indicated that he is unable to participate tonight, so can we have a motion to excuse?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? And then Councilmember Steckler wanted me to let people know that he has been trying to watch on YouTube, even though he can't participate. Still, he is staying up to speed with what's been going on, and he's familiar with everything we're doing. Before we get to audience communication, I'd like to propose 2 amendments to the agenda tonight and see if there's any objection. The first would be to move under item A, the guild negotiation update, to an executive session after audience communication at the end of the meeting. And then this second amendment would be to move new business item 7A to immediately after audience communication so that we can dispose of whatever recommendation you're making, so that if any of the applicants are watching, they don't have to stay around for the whole meeting if they'd like. Is there any objection to those 2 changes?
No, do we need to formally move to amend the agenda as proposed?
No, I think we're good. If there's no objection, I think there's unanimous consent to proceed. So with that, now we will turn to audience communication. I'll start in the chambers, and I see none. Anyone online like to address the council tonight? Going once, twice, 3 times. Okay, it'll be an opportunity again at the end of the meeting. And as amended, before we get to old business, we'll do an item of new business. I'm going to turn it over to, I'm not sure who. Councilmember Allison, to deal with our Park and Rec Board appointments.
Yes, so I had the pleasure of interviewing 4 candidates for appointment to the Parks and Rec Board with Councilmember Duque and Councilmember Paddock. And we've made our decision. We're going to reappoint Casey and appoint Ari McDonald and Paul Heiss as new members of that commission.
And just to be clear, your motion is for the council to appoint those, reappoint and appoint those members. Okay.
Yes, we're proposing appointing those 3 people.
Is the record clear on which, I'm not sure if they're different terms of these positions, or are they all the same? Do we
They
need?
all expire October 31st, 2025.
Okay, perfect. So there's been a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes 6-0. Congratulations to everyone. Welcome aboard, Mr. Heisa. Okay, now we're going to go back to old business. Turn over the Deputy City Manager / Finance Director.
All right. I think we're going to start here again. So we did have some changes. Do I need to share the screen?
Yes, please.
All right. Get this off. Okay, so we had some changes. I actually think I'm gonna jump here real quick. So since we talked last, we received some additional information on the fire contract. So we have included that amount. So this was originally $178,019.75. This has changed to 204,544 spot 75. So this has changed the levy rate that we will be collecting. So that is one factor, as well as we have taken out that 1% increase that was discussed in the proposed budget. So I just wanted to touch base previously. So as we move into the property tax discussions, it's very important that we understand when we say a 0% increase or a 1% increase going forward, as far as the county's concerned, it's still going to be $0 and 0% for the ordinance, specifically because our highest lawful levy is related to the amount of taxes we collected in this year, so in 2022. So we collected $6.6 million, or we will be in 2022. So anything above that would be that 1%. So we would have to go over that $6,566,891.84 for it to actually count to the county as a 1% increase. So that is why the ordinance specifically says it's going to be a 0% increase for $0. Now, I do have a form that I'll be filling out that I will send to the assessor, and it will have the amount that we actually will be collecting. So that's going to be closer to this number that is right here. So for 2023, if we have a 0% increase, we're asking for $4,230,743.11. So this is a 0% increase as far as we're concerned, because it's under that 6.6 million. And we're just going to be talking about a 0% increase and a 1% increase as a portion of this new tax levy that we've been talking about. So when we say, you know, we're talking $42,000 instead of $66,000. So that'll be what our 1% is. But as far as the county's concerned, we're not actually collecting any additional money. All right, so from our last meeting, this number right here was closer to 6.1 or 0.6194, I believe is what it was. So this has gone down. So it's the taxes collected will be going down. So again, we're just going to be taking the levy amount that we need. So that's this figure. We're going to be dividing it by the assessed value. So this is this middle figure, the $1 billion assessed value of all of the houses and property in Mill Creek. And then we're going to take that and multiply it by 1,000 to get the rate right here that you pay for $1,000. It's a rate per $1,000. So going forward, in 2017, a house that was $500,000, they would be paying $927.55. So this is the regular property tax levy. So this is what we're still going to be collecting. This in red is the EMS levy that we were collecting that we are no longer collecting as of next year. So as of January 1st, the RFA will be collecting taxes for your fire service. So together, these two amounts were collected by the city in 2017, and they would have paid $1,177.55 in 2017 for a $500,000 house. So to keep it simple, and a house at $500,000 for 2023. So I'm going to take and divide by 1,000 to get this $500. So this is your property value. So it's per 1,000. So we're talking the new levy for 2023 is going to be just short of 62 cents. So this number right here is coming from this right here. So you're just going to take your levy divided by your assessed value to get your 62 cents per 1,000. So you can see we'll be collecting $308.59 if we have a 0% increase. The 2023 EMS levy is going away. So the total that we'd be collecting on a $500,000 house would be $308.59 compared to $1,177.55. So to complicate it a hint more, your assessed value is going to go up. So your house is likely worth more in 2023 than it was in 2017. And it's likely based on our assessed value that your house has increased around 62%. So this is strictly based on the assessed value changes. So if your house went up by 61.76%, that would mean your house was worth $808,800. So if you take that times our current rate that we're proposing is 0%, that's gonna be $499.19 on this house. Again, no EMS levy, so you're still gonna be collecting the $499.19. So this is a 57.6% decrease between 2023 and 2027, or I'm sorry, 2017. And this is including that EMS change. So it's got both levies included in this figure. So the reason this is so large is because we have the EMS levy that's going away, and then we're decreasing the regular property tax levy. So there are two different pieces here. So to come and change this up, if you had a $500,000 house this year, so in 2022, you would be paying, so you'd have that 500,000, you'd be paying the regular levy that used to be $1.29, and then you'd also be paying that EMS levy. And so you'd be paying $1.64 for your house per thousand. So you'd be paying $818.15. So now that EMS levy's fallen off and we've taken that 2.3 million out of our regular levy, we've increased, so from 22 to 23, this assessed value went up by 34.56%. So your house is increased from 500,000 to 672,800. So that's where these figures are coming from. So then we're gonna divide by 1,000, that gets 672.80, and our new rate is 62 cents, just under 62 cents. So you're gonna be paying $415.25 with 25 cents with a 0% increase. So altogether, without the EMS and with the decrease in property tax levy, it's gonna be a 49.2% decrease from 22. So for 23 to 22. And that is the EMS and the regular property tax levy. So I included in the packet an additional one that has the figures for a 1% increase. Just have to make sure I grab the right one. Okay, so I don't necessarily want to run through all of these specifics again for the interest of time, but I will say, if we go to the very bottom of the second sheet, that is the 1%, you'll be paying $4.14 more on this home, this $672,800 home for 2023. It would be $4.14 more annually if you were to have that additional 1% based on this assessed value. And just remember, it's not a true 1% just because we are under that $6.6 million figure. So the county says you're not actually collecting any additional funds beyond where you were, so that's not a true 1%. But for our audience and just so that we understand where we're at, we're going to call it a 1%. Okay, so
Well, Laurel, can I, just to make sure I understand, so we told the voters with the fire annexation that we would not renew the EMS levy and that we'd take our regular property levy down by the amount we would need to collect for the fire contract. So that's reflected in the 0% sheet on the 2022 and 2023 lines.
correct. So you can see the change right here. So this is going to be the regular property tax and the EMS is completely gone.
Right. And so with this budget that we're looking at, we propose to do exactly what we told the voters we would do. We annually also make a determination on whether to raise property taxes or not to raise them. Which is the point I think we talked about last week. If we wanted to raise taxes, let's take a vote on that. And I think what you're telling us is technically, if we wanted to raise taxes 1% or whatever amount, we can't do that for next year because we can only raise it above the $6,566,000 figure. And since we've reduced our main levy down below that, we're not technically we don't have to take a vote to raise taxes, but I would propose if we do have a discussion and decide we're essentially retaining 1% of the amount that we told the voters we'd take down to zero.
So we do have to take a vote though, just to collect anything.
Yeah, no, I understand.
But
I'm
correct.
just talking about the increase. So
Yes.
technically we're not raising taxes, so we don't have to take a vote on that. We have to pass an ordinance that will say 0%. But if we wanted to make a decision to retain 1% of either the 4.2 million or 1% of the 6.5 to help offset some cost, we could propose to do that as a separate motion, just to give the staff direction that we want that included as part of the budget to make clear that we're taking a separate standalone
Correct.
action on that. Am I stating it correctly? Okay, Councilmember Paddock.
So what would be the process if we didn't want to take a vote, but want to take advantage of that 1%? That the staff would just do that?
Well,
So we do have to at least take a vote to pass this ordinance, otherwise we can collect no taxes.
Copy.
but the ordinance just says we're going to do a 0% increase, meaning we're not going to increase it above our maximum allowed amount, which is elected this year, 6,566,000.
Correct.
Just as if property taxes can't get less confusing. Councilmember Cavallari.
Thank you, Mayor. One of the concerns I had heard last week from citizen kind of reflected an angst with members of the public. So just so it's explained easy for me and for anybody else. So let's say we took the amount we collect for property tax and the amount RFA that South County Fire is going to be collecting and pile those together. Would they be paying more with the 1% property tax increase, or would it stay status quo? I think that's where the rub is the total at the end of the day. Are we writing a bigger check versus not?
So that would depend on what the RFA, what their tax levy is. I don't know that they have figured that out yet, but it is likely that even with a 0% increase for us, there will be an increase for the public, but it would not be in relation to our specific regular property tax levy.
Yeah, Councilmember Cavalier, I think the way to look at it is if you look on the 0% increase, the amount we would collect, if we took it down to zero to net it out, revenues would be $4,230,000. So essentially what we'd be doing is this number on the 1% sheet reflects retaining that amount plus 60, and what's the 65, roughly $65,000.
I am sorry, I was trying to grab this. So
Looking at the 1% sheet in the 2023, I mean, essentially the amount we'd be raising taxes means we wouldn't be reducing our city levy because we can't raise the property tax limit 1%. We'd be retaining that 1% of our.
right, we'd be retaining an additional 42,000. So we have still, in theory, taken that whole 2.3 million, that anything related to fire is pulled out. Any kind of increase would be on the funding that is for the general fund that did not support that fire contract.
Yeah, and I think it's a form over substance. If there's a desire to retain or raise taxes, I would suggest we take a vote on that so that we do what we told the voters we do, take it down to zero, but then separately make a decision as we decide every November whether to do something with property taxes.
I do like the retain language. I think that's more clear. Okay.
Were there any questions online? I don't have the full screen up. Stephanie or Connie, any questions? I don't think so.
No questions.
Okay. Continue.
All right, so I'll try to get through this next piece a little faster. Okay, so if you would like, typically we open the public hearing and then I review the budget. And then we can take comments and have a discussion.
Well, we're not doing a public hearing on the tax. We're just discussing, that's why it gets complicated because this is all part of the budget. And so I think I have a script to read that will help explain what we're proposing to do. I'm taking my cue
Sorry,
very
I
very
jumped
slowly.
into property taxes instead of
Yeah.
starting with the budget.
So it makes it a little confusing. So we're going to hold a second public hearing on the budget tonight. This is another hearing that's required by statute. We gave notice on the 15th and 22nd of October. We're going to use the following process. I'll again ask for a motion to open the public hearing on the proposed 2023-24 final budget. If there's a second and an affirmative vote, we'll then receive a staff report from Oral regarding the proposed final budget. Then we'll hear public testimony on the proposed final budget and ask people to limit their testimony to 3 minutes. Once all members of the public in person and online have had a chance to testify, I will ask for a motion to close the public hearing. We'll then engage in a discussion and propose changes, if any, that the council would like to have made to the final budget. We are not going to adopt the budget tonight. I think we're going to hear from staff a couple proposed changes that from what we were presented with last week. And so we are being asked at the end of the public hearing to take action on the property tax increase / retainage. And then at our next meeting, which date to be determined at a following agenda item, we would then have one further opportunity for the public to provide testimony on the changes staff presents tonight. And then we take action on the final budget at that time. Clear as mud? Okay,
All right,
so with that, do we have a motion to open the public hearing, please?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Laurel, proceed with your staff report, please.
all right. So on the agenda today, we kind of jumped into the revenue sources, so I apologize for that. But we're going to be looking at the different changes related to the fire marshal salary increase. And then we're going to jump to the property tax scenarios. We're going to look at the data in this presentation at a 0% increase for the retainage or a 1% increase for the retainage. Following that, for the 23 to 24 final budget review, we'll just review the changes that were needed to offset that compounding 1%. So previously I had included that 1% increase, retainage increase for 23 and 24. So we'll look at how that compounding was removed and then what had to be removed to offset that. And then we will go ahead and look at the regular property tax levy after council closes the hearing and after they're finished with any kind of budget discussion. So you'll provide any kind of changes that you'd like to see.
Question.
And then your next agenda item will be that adoption of the property tax ordinance. So tonight, we're just going to be going over the final budget. So we went from the preliminary budget to a proposed budget to this final budget. And again, I don't want to confuse anyone because this is a proposed final budget, but if we think preliminary to proposed to final, that's the easiest way to track the changes that have happened. So we're currently in the public hearing, and then we'll have that property tax adoption tonight. And then either the 15th, 22nd, or 29th, we will go ahead and hopefully adopt the budget when we have that after that public hearing for the revised final budget. And then along with the budget, we're going to go ahead and do the CIP and the TIP that night as well. All right, so I think I need to get this so that you can see it. All right, so I thought it was useful, and the mayor had asked to see the compounding effect when you have 1% that's not collected. And I think I left my sheet over here. Give me 1 second. All right, so I wanted to make sure that everyone understood how these numbers were coming about. So in 2024, the $42,307, that is going to be collected in 2024, but it's going to be 1% of your 2023 tax amount. So this will be your levy. You can collect 1% more, which is where this figure will come in. And this is going to be that 1% off of the previous year. So in 2024, if we collected 1%, we would be at this 4.2 million figure. And so this 0% is if we stayed flat this whole time.
Laurel, just to be clear, I mean, you're doing it based on what we will be collecting. Technically, under the law, we could, that 1% could be calculated on the maximum amount we have collected, which would be 6.556 million.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so these amounts do have the decrease of that fire contract, that $2.3 million. I have taken that out just to be as honest as we can, as transparent with the taxpayers. So I have the compounding amount. Here we have the amount that you would collect if you left that levy at 0 and the change. So to get the 85,000, that would be 1% of your 2024, or 1% of your 2023 and 1% of your 2024. So you'd be collecting 1% of that 2023 figure, 1% of the 2024 to get this figure here. And then the same thing, 1% of these last 3 to get this. So that's how you're getting that compounding. So you have 42,307, and then you have 42,307 plus that 42,730.51. So this is just, oh, I lost my mouse. So it's the compounding. So it's this plus this times 1%. So you're adding, and then you keep adding each year. Does everyone understand how that works? Like the compounding of each individual year. So overall, if we leave taxes completely flat, we'll have not collected about $643,000 over 4 years. 5 years, I'm sorry.
And that's the difference between using ARPA funds for a particular item in the budget as opposed to doing what we're talking about tonight.
Right, so when we talked about removing that 1% for 23 and 24, there was a compounding effect. So it wasn't just, around $40,000. It was much more because you have that $40,000 that year plus the other 40 and that 1% on top of that. So we'll discuss those changes here in a second. All right, so as a reminder, the 23 regular property taxes are estimated at 4.2 million, so about 62 cents per thousand. So this is without any kind of increase. We are getting rid of the EMS levy. That 1.8 million will not be collected anymore. That will be money that essentially is going to the RFA instead of to the city. And then as of January 1st, the RFA will be taking over fire services for Mill Creek. So we are also decreasing our regular property tax levy by $2.3 million. And that would have been 2.5, but we do have a little over 200,000. It's right here, this 204,000 that we have to pay still for our fire station and that fire marshal cost. And that cost did go up from our last budget because that has increased by $26,525 annually for that fire marshal salary cost change.
And our annual and our annual payment for the fire station is 60,000. Is that correct?
Right,
of
it's
that
right
amount.
under 60,000.
And this doesn't reflect out of, again, being fully transparent, we haven't yet determined the amount of the fees we would charge that may cover some of the fire marshal services.
Correct. All right, so the 1.8 million and the 2.5 million is what the full fire contract was. It was 4.3 million annually. And then I just wanted to make sure we really pulled out that this has changed because it does change the property taxes we will be collecting. All right. So we have, in 2022, we had assessed value of $5 billion. And then we collected the levy of 6.6 million. So this is the amount that is the last amount we collected. So we could collect this plus 1%. And if we had collected this plus another $65,000, that is when the county would say, all right, you are going 1% over what you collected. So that is when they would consider it 1%. So that's when we were collecting $1.28, almost $1.29. And so in 2022, a house that was 500,000, they would be paying $644.50. And then at this point in time, we've had new construction that's been added that was an increase of 0.4%. We had a reevaluation. So they said, hey, we actually think your properties are worth more. We think the overall property in Mill Creek has increased by just under 35%. So the assessed value that you now have has gone from this $5 billion figure to 6.8, almost $6.9 billion. So that's an increase of almost 35%. Okay, so then I've got some more math for you. So for 2023, we had $6.8 billion, almost 6.9. So with a 0% levy increase, so that's important, this 0%, we will be collecting $4.2 million. So $4,230,743.11. So that would be $415.24 on a house that was 500,000 in 2022 and is now 672,800 in 2023. So I've just got the math down here in case you wanted to double check anything. I will say I had run into some rounding because we had rounded this to 6172. So this was off a penny. So I've updated this from 1 cent. So you can see here, I didn't catch it here, but it's really just the rounding when you pull this into four digits. Yes.
And that's what's you showed us before in this
Correct.
document. Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
All right, so with 1%, that's going to be $42,307.43. That's 1% of this actual levy that we're collecting, that we're retaining instead of increasing. So with a 1% retainage, that would increase our tax per thousand to a little over 62 cents, where before we were just under 62 cents. So this is where we went from $415.24 at 0% to, at a retainage of 1%, $419.39. Okay. All right, so we also hit a request on, how has the city increased taxes over the last few years? So I went ahead and got some help on pulling the last 10 years. And it really does look like if you average it out, we did about 1% every other year. And I will say, we have an IPD cap. So like if inflation is below 1%, we cannot do the full 1% unless we do a second ordinance that says we have substantial need, and we didn't want to do that. So that's where this 0.95 came from. Otherwise, it could have been 1%. So just as a general note, it's about every other year we do a 1% increase. So over the last 10 years, we have increased just under 5% for our property taxes, for the regular property tax. All right, again, this has not changed. Of every dollar in property taxes that you pay in 2022, you were paying 18 cents to Mill Creek. And then we had our surface water fee that I went ahead and included only because this is something you see, the county now collects this with your property taxes. And so this isn't a true property tax, but it is a fee that you typically see on your property tax statement. Okay, so we're gonna jump into property tax scenarios. So we have two different ones. We have a 0% and then we have a 1% retainage. So for the 0%, this number right here is what's going to be important. $4,230,743.11. So this is what we'll be looking at collecting. So when we look at passing the ordinance, there's just some additional language for transparency that we've put together in a motion. This will be the number for a 0% increase, which will be a 36% decrease from 2022. I want to remind everyone, this is a 36% decrease over just the regular property tax, not the regular property tax and the EMS. Okay. Okay, so the same thing, only we have a 1% increase. I will correct this. This should say 1%. We'll get this fixed so that it doesn't confuse anyone. We do have new construction. And so this is the figure with a 1% increase. So $4,273,050.54. So that's a decrease of 35%. So the difference is a decrease of 36% or 35%. And then I did make a note, I remember. Did want to give you the banked capacity. So banked capacity, we currently have $97,267.82. If we wanted to collect that, that would be, just for comparison, since we've been doing everything on this, 500,000 in 2022, 672,800 in 2023. So it would be an additional $9.55 to use our banked capacity. For a house that was 672,800, and it would be $14.19 if we wanted to do the banked capacity for $1 million house.
But wouldn't we have to use up our 2,293,000 in capacity before we even get the bank capacity?
Yes, so this would be, if we wanted to add 97,000, if we wanted to retain an additional 97,267.82.
Right.
Then it would be an additional $9.55 for a $672,800 house. So you are very correct. Okay, so from that,
Before you, I mean, just so we get the numbers straight, I mean, really what we're talking, we can't take a vote on a property tax increase given the way the law is written. So we're talking retaining 1%. With the numbers that Laurel has presented by my poor math on an $808,800 assessed value house, the difference if we retain that 1% would be $4.97. And on a $672,800 house, they would be paying $4.14.
Yep.
So that's what we're talking about. Or presumably we may be talking about in a few minutes.
yes. Okay, so from here, I'm going to jump into the budget. So just as a reminder, we started with the preliminary budget and we decided, you know, maybe we do want to go ahead and increase staffing. We are wanting to make sure that we provide a certain level of service, and it could take some additional employees. So we did remove the comprehensive plan cost that we are planning on proposing using ARPA funding for. We cut the legislative lobbyist by 30,000, and then we cut the professional services in community development and public works, mainly because if we have this additional planner, we won't have to contract out as much work. So they'll be learning And we won't be incurring that additional cost from a contractor. And then we do have a lot of catch up to do for the CIP, and staff has indicated that another engineer is vital to get what we need done over the next 5 years bare minimum, and it is likely to continue. All right, so moving from the preliminary to proposed, we then discussed at our last public hearing, the proposed budget. So since then, we found out that the fire marshal contract is going to increase for this specific budget. So for 23 and 24, it's going to increase by $53,050. So we did that, and then we had to take out the 1% property tax that had been included previously for 23 and 24. So we needed to decrease revenues by just under 73,000. So we went ahead and tried to cut where we felt like it was most realistic. It will be challenging. There's no question about that, but we did feel like if we were going to cut, these are the places that it could be done. So we have the revenue decrease, and then expense decreases that are offset with the expense increase of the fire marshal contract for a net expense decrease of just under 73,000 as well. As a reminder, this is just where we had proposed staffing. I will note we had some summing issues across the bottom. None of the figures have changed here. It is strictly just some of the summing functions down here in the previous version. So I just wanted to call that out. And you can see the different changes across staffing over the last few years. Okay, so for the general fund, I will note that expenses have gone down. We had noticed that the police line was extremely high. We had a trending issue in Excel, so we pulled that down where we calculated that it should be. So we're actually pretty solid as long as revenues continue increasing by around 2% and expenses don't go overly crazy. So we've got another 2% increase on most of our expenses other than salaries, because we didn't increase salaries based on CBAs and potential CBAs that are closing. And then just different estimates on where salaries would be. So as a reminder for these revenues, for your revenues, you don't have that 1.8 EMS levy anymore, 1.8 million. And then we also have that 2.3 million that's going down for the regular property tax. So that's why you see such a decrease. And then this continues to increase by 2% with our other revenues. And I will note I did increase 25 through 28 with a 1% increase on property taxes or a 1% retention. Now, that's not necessarily required, but if we were to do that, we would still have a healthy reserve where we're used to seeing it in 2028.
Laurel,
Yes.
I thought we looked at a slide last week that showed our general fund reserve balance going negative by 2027.
So that was when we had that very large trend issue for there was an issue with the police department, and it was about 32% too high on one specific larger cost.
So with correcting that adjustment, we're no longer staring at a cliff in 5 or 6 years.
Yes. And this is again, just as a reminder, we have the salary study that we'll be needing to do for all of our different fees. This does include a 1% increase each year in property taxes starting in 2025. And naturally that could be offset with the difference in the fee study. And then we don't know how we're going to end up with growing through and rebuilding revenues after COVID. So we have a lot of different rec programs, a lot of different leased space. We're considering all of our options. So there are a lot of crystal ball figures in here.
Councilmember Paddock.
That difference is like $2.5 million a year in 26, 27, and 28. So
It kind of changes the way I look at it, but
those are good difference.
Yeah, it's quite significant.
Councilmember
Yes.
Duque.
You're referring to that, the numbers, the correction.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, as soon as I saw the numbers and then when you said it, I was like, oh, I'm so glad. And so I just want to, because I got thrown off a little bit, and I think it's just because we're trying to get that language right. So for 23, 24, 0,
Correct.
25, and as you said, it's the
Correct.
retainage word, not an
Yes.
increase, but that's what you're saying for that language there. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then I did go ahead for 23 and 24. Did decrease sales tax slightly based on where we're projected to end this year. 2.5% and then 3.25% in 2024. It would be great if nothing decreases, but just in case we felt that that was needed. All right, so then I just broke everything out annually. So you can see the regular property tax levy. So this is decreasing. We've got the 2.3 million. EMS is going away. We have sales tax and all of those adjustments. And then I did a 2% increase after 2024 for most of these. I don't believe, I will say not property tax, passports. We are projecting to be higher than previous because we are adding those 2 staff members so that we can open another window or 2. Recreation, we're trying to really beef up, get it back to previous years. And then all of our different fees potentially will be increasing after that fee study. Okay, and then just a 5-year forecast for individual years for expenses. I will note the police, the 6.3 million, this is just the remaining budget. I wanted to make sure, just depending on what happens, that we have that full amount projected in 2022. We had a lot of overtime. So if they have a larger salary increase that's retro for the full year, we'll have our current expenses. And then that increase will go toward any kind of hours worked and any overtime worked as well. So I just wanted to make sure we were projecting a bit conservative there. And then I did correct this figure for police. And then everything else should be about the same. And then we do have the increase here, just one more for the fire, just because we do know that that fire marshal cost will be increasing for 23, and then going forward, it'll be whatever they decide to tell us it is. All right, so this is just revenues split by the biennium. It's just another way to look at it. Property taxes, sales and use, the different fees, intergovernmental, so funding that comes through the state or the federal government, any kind of interest, our central services, passports, recreation. All right, this has not changed a whole lot. Property taxes are not going to be covering as much of our revenue, so our revenue will be slightly more volatile. So it'll be a lot more variable. So if sales tax is impacted, that's going to hit our revenues harder than previous years because property tax is a more stable income. All right, and then all of these other funds have not changed. So I'll fly through these. We have the street fund, have same projections. So you're talking motor vehicle tax, multimodal transportation, different permits and grants in here. I will say on the streets fund, this is the one thing just to note is these transfers in are coming from the general fund because this specific fund is struggling to maintain the streets at a level that we need it to and not go over budget. So it is requiring some general fund help over the next few years. Okay, ARPA. So as a reminder, so we've been pulling some of this funding out of the general fund. I did go ahead and include all of ARPA all of our available revenue, and I split it in 23 and 24. We do not have to have that spent by the end of 2024, but it has to leave our account by the end of 2026. So it has to be allocated by the end of 2024 and spent by the end of 2026. Okay, we have council contingency, any kind of emergencies or unanticipated needs. That's where council can decide if they want to cover some kind of additional expense. Municipal Arts Fund gets 1% of our total project costs for municipal construction projects. So I have included all of the available funding we have through 2027 with the estimated revenues from our capital projects we have in our CIP. Paths and Trails is primarily funded through motor vehicle fuel tax. So this is a portion of what comes into streets. And so this can be, this funding can be used to update some kind of signage or any kind of path updates that we need, path or trail. Drug buy fund, this is going to be, the main expenses are investigative supplies and costs. Revenues are anytime we have drug-related confiscations, anytime we get revenue, it has to go into this fund. City Hall North, this is where all of our lease revenue comes into. So all of that office space, it doesn't go in, that revenue doesn't go into the general fund, it goes into City Hall North to help upkeep this building. Okay, debt service, this is going to be how we pay our general obligation fund. The revenues are going to be coming from that stormwater account that we'll be talking about later. And then we just pay that bill, the interest and the principal out of this fund. Local revitalization, this is the fund that will be going away. We're still waiting on the response from the state on how we handle this funding, but we are estimating that this will be leaving our account by the end of 2023. All right, so REIT, you can see that we roughly get about 1.8 million to 2 million in revenues annually. So this is how we fund all of our other capital improvement funds. So any kind of revenue is going to be from that REIT tax on the sale of homes and properties. And then you can see these expenses are the transfer. So anything out of the REIT fund is going to be a transfer to a capital fund. So this is how we're going to be funding all of our different capital projects that are in the CIP. And we do end up capped in 2028. We do need to keep 10% of estimated revenues for the year. So that is why we left this fund with 222,000. So funding from that fund will flow into the capital improvement fund. So you can see that most of the time, so in 25 and 26, we don't have any funding coming in. It does increase in 2028 because we'll have a larger transfer from REIT and larger expenses going forward. And that will be tied to that capital improvement plan. So parks and open space, this is another capital improvement plan. This is related to any kind of park. And then just like the others, like the CIP, we have revenues coming from REIT and then any kind of mitigation fees, grants, and then the expenses are for the projects in the CIP, and those are projected out through 2028. Okay, and then the last capital improvement fund is the road improvement fund. Same thing, we have REIT revenues, mitigation costs, grants, and then all of the expenses. And we do have quite a bit that we're trying to get done in 23 and 24. And then it just starts increasing after that. So in 2028, we're going to break even. So not terrible. Lastly, surface water. This is going to be the transfers that go into that debt fund. And then this is our utility. We have an ecology grant of 50,000 that we typically get biannually. And then the surface water fees that are collected with your property taxes. That is the main revenue source for this fund. Okay, replacement, equipment replacement and renewal. This is where each department buys some kind of larger equipment purchase, anything that's going to be good for over 5 years or 5 years or more and is over 25,000, it will fall in here for the replacement cost. So we do straight line depreciation. Each year they'll put that amount, that depreciation costs into this fund so that eventually they'll be able to replace whatever type of equipment they need to replace. Okay, and then our last fund is the unemployment compensation and the self-insurance fund. We are doing a transfer of 25,000 in 2023 just to keep this up where it typically is for our fund balance. And then I did project, I calculated 25,000 for 23 and 24. I do not think we will need that much in expenses, but it's just going to be there in case anything happens, any kind of unanticipated insurance deductible for property, auto liability, and then any kind of unemployment claims. All right, and then this is just a large summary of the revenues, expenses, and then the fund balances for each fund. And I will note, just so we're all clear, there is a 0% property tax increase included in this budget, in this final budget that we have put together. Does anyone have any questions?
Not seeing any yet. Well, not seeing any now.
If you want to go to the public or if you have any discussion,
Well, were we gonna talk about the authorized positions? And
we can.
what's changed? I mean, it looks like from what we discussed in the prior 2 weeks,
Yes.
there's we had been talking about the project engineer and the planner positions. I think we beat those up pretty good the last couple of weeks. But it looks like you're proposing 2 customer service positions that weren't previously part of the preliminary budget.
I'm sorry, I completely forgot about this piece. All right, I need to make sure that I am sharing my screen. All right, so we have some minor changes. So this deputy city manager had been changed to assistant city manager. So we're just changing the title here. We have the deputy city clerk that used to be exclusively in this executive department, and we have split that in half so that it's the expenses hitting half of the executive fund and then half of the clerk fund. So we're not getting rid of anyone. We're just splitting how the expense hits each account. For the resource manager, we are proposing dropping this to a salary grade F and then changing it from a director back to a manager because we do feel like the needs of the city are more in line with a manager than a director. And then we have 2 customer service representatives to part-time at a 0.4 FTE that we have requested to bring in that additional revenue related to passports. For the police chief, all this is an update for the salary schedule, just so that it says police chief and director of public safety instead of just police chief. And then we have the city engineer. We have proposed that this moves to a salary grade F. So this is going to be moving up 2 grades based on the market data with our consultant. He has made this recommendation, so we are including this in this authorized position list. We have the new position for the project engineer. So they currently have 1 project engineer. They've asked for 2. So this is a new position here. And then the planner position is a new position. And then the only change on the public works maintenance and operations manager is this maintenance and language. This was a public works operation manager. So there's no pay change, just the title. And so that's summarized down here.
So the change is the addition of 2 part-time positions that don't total 1 full FTE.
Yes, so we have 2 part-time positions that total 0.8 of an FTE. And then we have two full-time positions in the Public Works Department. And that is going to be the project engineer that was requested and the planner.
Councilmember Duque. I did.
I'm so sorry. I laughed because I thought you were still asking and I was like, why did you say my name when you're asking a question? For the customer service representative, the 0.4 and 0.4, this is not in addition to what you had shared previously.
No, so this has been included.
This is, you're just now showing us, this is the recap of where we are. Okay,
Correct.
okay. But the only, you showed us changes in titles. And flagged for us where they were in terms of the salary grade, if numbers were being, where the budget would come from. But the city engineer is then
That
a
has
new
been
one?
budgeted. That one, it's the same city engineer. It's just based on the market.
we increased the salary.
Yes.
Thank you. That's what I was missing. That's just a, that's what the F, that was the,
It's mainly cleanup.
perfect. So with this budget, we are saying a combined one for customer service representative and then a project engineer and a planner.
Yes, 0.8 for the customer service rep,
Yes. 0.8.
one for a project engineer and one for a planner.
Okay.
Those are the new positions.
Mhm. And then you showed us in a previous slide, what was the original intent? Or what we had,
Correct.
okay, I just need to go back to that one. Thank you.
And then I think did you?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to also make it clear that we are exploring. We've been actually looking at a level of a senior project, a senior engineer as well. It's not in here, but something that I just want to make sure it's clear that we are, it's something that's been on the table because we want to make sure it aligns with our CIP projects. So we still need to kind of dive into that a little more deeper. So we're still discussing that on this end, but I just don't want anybody to be surprised in the future if something should come up that it gets to that point that one of those positions may need to be increased. So I just want to make that clear. Thank you.
Yeah, we just want to make sure that we can fill the positions and we want to make sure we have the staff before we come with additional requests. All right. Does anyone have any other questions? I did have one other document, and that is just the salary schedule for the non-represented. Just as a reminder, our represented have already had the CBA for AFSMI. They already have their COLA approved in that CBA. So I will likely just go ahead and include a copy of their last page that has their positions and the pay. But I just wanted to make sure that we had our non-represented shown. And at this point in time for 2023, we're looking at a 3% increase for COLA. And at this point in time in the CBA for AFSCME, we're looking at a 3.5.
So this would be an exhibit to the budget that we're going to take action on at a subsequent meeting.
Correct. And
But
fourth,
it's not included in this budget. So then we would
No,
then.
this,
increase
this
it.
reflects the changes that are proposed in this
Perfect.
budget.
Thank
but
you.
yeah.
But then we wouldn't actually,
We're not going to take a separate vote on this document. It would be adopted if we elect to decide to approve the budget as it's been presented or with modifications.
thank you.
yes. And I will just call out that so this is on this Deputy Director of Public Safety. This is on the salary schedule. This is not an approved position, but this has been on the salary schedule. We're just updating the name to match the police chief change. And we'll discuss this potentially with ARPA for a proposal, but just as a reminder, the authorized position list is what we are going off of. This is just all of the different positions that have been non-represented that are on here that were on this salary schedule over the last few years, even before I was here. And I don't think I am sharing my screen, so I need to just do this real quick so everyone can see. This is the Deputy Director of Public Safety and then the police chief change as well.
So that change, the police chief, is it going to be going forward police chief slash director of public safety, or are we transitioning away from police chief to director of public safety?
I believe we'll still call him
Chief.
chief and police chief, but his official title, he will also be covering that public safety piece, especially as we start working with the fire department in the RFA.
Okay, are there any final questions? Councilmember Duque.
On Exhibit A for the Deputy Director of Public Safety, it says next to it Chief of Police.
Yes, so it's Deputy Director of Public Safety, Chief of Police, so it's still deputy.
Okay.
Deputy for
It's hard
both.
to see.
Perfect. So
because
it's
of this.
Deputy Director of Public Safety and Deputy Chief of Police.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
And I can change that if you would like, because, okay,
We don't need to change it tonight.
not tonight.
Okay. Any final questions before I turn it over to see if there's any public testimony? Okay, seeing none, I'll open it up. Anyone in the audience like to provide comments on the budget? I see a no. Anyone online like to provide any comments on the budget? Proposed final budget? Going once, twice, 3 times. Okay, can we have a motion to close the public hearing, please?
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the public hearing is closed. Okay, so that brings us to action. I think there's 2 steps we need to take on the property taxes. One, I think we can, as a matter of pro forma, adopt the order, or put forward a motion on the 0% increase, because we're in an interesting situation that for the foreseeable decades, council is never going to have to raise property taxes unless they decide to retain another almost 2.3 million of what we're authorized by law to retain. So the proposed ordinance, which I believe is in our packet, reflects, I propose we take 2 actions. We'll go ahead and take action on that ordinance, which looks like this. And then we separately have a discussion on what we now going forward for the foreseeable future would be a retainage of taxes of 1% of our levy collection that were authorized already under existing law to retain. So there's a motion do we have as ordinance / resolution? So this would be an ordinance for the city, not
This
a
would be an
resolution.
Ordinance, correct.
So this would be ordinance number, where did I put my-
Mayor, we are assigning the ordinance numbers after the meeting.
Okay, that's right. Forgive me. Okay, so is everyone comfortable with taking 2 steps? We'll first entertain any motion on the
Yep.
proposed form of ordinance reflecting a 0% property tax increase, and then have a discussion of whether we retain 1%. Fair enough? Okay, so is there a motion to approve the proposed ordinance reflecting a 0% property tax increase for 2023?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Once, twice. Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? This form Department of Revenue ordinance reflecting 0%, which will go to the county, is approved 6-0. Okay, now the discussion of whether we retain.
Is that 5-0 or 6-0?
I'm sorry, I forgot that Councilmember Cavalieri was not sitting next to me. I was wondering why it was so quiet. Approved 5-0. Thank you for that clarification. Okay, so now on to any retainage, if any. So rather than just having a free-for-all discussion, if there's any motion to put on the table, or well, let's open up. We'll just open up for discussion. Thoughts?
Would you like me to bring up the amounts?
I don't think, I think I'll start if that's not a problem. Why don't you bring up the slide that shows the general fund? because I mean, I'll say where I'm very briefly where I was at is before that slide came up, I started to pencil out my notes why I was saying we need to retain 1%. Because I thought the cliff was approaching us in 5 years, which is what we've seen for the last few years. To some extent, I think those numbers up there reflect the good job the city has done as a whole when we tightened the belt, and we probably tightened it more than we needed to, but at the time it was the right decision because we didn't know which way the world was going. Our costs do continue to rise faster than our revenues are coming in, but our projections for the next 5 or 6 years look good, and that does not reflect the ARPA money that we have in the bank as well. So my mind changed coming into this meeting where I was at and where I'm at now. So I don't think we need to retain anything going forward, but that's just my 2 cents. So happy to hear from others. Councilmember Duque.
I agree wholeheartedly with what you shared. That was the struggle I was having, was that I like the phrase, the cliff that was coming forward. But I feel because we have the ARPA funding and making sure we use it to fill in gaps that, you know, that we need to do to make sure that we're going closer to what was, you know, the initial what staff has outlined for us, I think is really important. But you know, it's also important to thank you for providing the information, all of the budgeting with the 1% and going through that and explaining to us, because it is important for all of us to have the discussion and continue to have discussions about how things just get more expensive. And you know, we need to make sure that we're keeping an eye on that. But I agree that I don't think we need to retain this year.
Councilmember Paddock, and I can't see my screen to see if either council member online wants to. Okay, they both have their hands up. So Councilmember Paddock first.
Laura, would you bring up the, I think it's the compounding effect? I just want to call out one thing. When it comes to, let's say, not retaining this year, this biennium, you know, it's really just not retaining that single year, right? 42,000. So we're really losing, quote unquote, a revenue stream over those 5 years at 1%. We're really losing, quote unquote, $44,000. And in the spirit of, I believe, you know, what we've committed to around the fire annexation, just for the avoidance of doubt, and we have a lot of purveyors of doubt, foregoing that for $44,000 seems like the right thing to do for the community, so that they can rest assured that we did what we said we were going to do.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to just kind of jump on with what you were saying, and I'm just not feeling comfortable with raising, which we're using what retaining. When we told everybody that we would give them back the money this year, and we do have this ARPA money, I'm very in favor of money that's going to compound, and over the long term, it does make a huge difference. And I do think at some point, those are very valuable discussions, but this particular year, I feel like we do have this ARPA money that we haven't used, that we can pull from for some of these things. So I'm not in favor of retaining any this year.
Councilmember Allison.
Everyone has pretty much covered it already, but I'm in total agreement. We made a promise to the public, and you know, between the property taxes increasing, you know, people are going to feel a tax increase, even if it's not by us legislating an increase for the city. So at a principle, I don't think that we should retain 1% this year. Next year is open for discussion, but for this year, I think the right thing to do is to fill in the gaps if we need to with the ARPA funding, and you know, stick to what we promised, which was not raise the city taxes if people bought into the fire annexation, which overwhelmingly was voted in. So thank you.
So am I correct to assume I'm not going to be hearing a motion and we can move on to the next item of the agenda?
I do think we want to ask the city attorney if we need to make some kind of a motion just to memorialize the amount for that county form that I'll be sending in that includes a 0%.
So if you have, I think what they will want is the amount and the levy rate. Is that on there?
The levy rate is not on the ordinance, which is why I had brought this language up. It's just changed slightly since we've already passed.
Okay. So this would be helpful to have a record of what the amount of the, that we would be collecting will be. We have one item there that is still being finalized, which is the amount for the fire marshal, fire inspection, and plan review services, some of which will be offset by revenue. But we know what the annual payment for the purchase of Fire Station 76 will be, and that is $60,000.
No, he's saying, so the point he's making is technically this ordinance that we approved that comes from Department of Revenue says that we're not raising our property taxes above $6,566,890.
Correct.
He's proposing that we just have clarification. And I guess I'll defer to the city attorney whether we can do a friendly amendment or if this, we can, do we need to vote to have, oh, I think we need to just clarify by vote that the first paragraph up on there, and I don't want to refer to it as a 0% tax levy increase because it's just confusing things, but the text of the paragraph, I think would be the motion to clarify what the prior motion was and that was approved. So it's just clarifying for the direction to the staff in finalizing the final budget that the property tax collection will be the $4,230,743.11.
I think basically you could move to direct the, that will be the case rather than this isn't a separate ordinance. I don't think you need a separate ordinance for this.
Okay,
But this will express the sense of the council that what we are trying to do is clarify to the community what the amount of the collection will be.
so another way to frame it would be a motion to direct staff to prepare the final budget with a property tax collection for 2023 in that amount.
Correct.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? That is approved 5-0. Thank you, Laurel. Appreciate all your work on this. Okay, do we have design review appointments tonight? It's on the agenda, but I'm,
Mayor, if I may interject here. There's a typo on the motion. It's 2 reappointments of members Hamilton and Hastings. And so that's, the motion would be to reappoint 2 volunteers. We didn't receive any applications. These are just reapplications for reappointment.
okay, that's right. Okay, so we have 3 vacancies on the design review board. There was 2 applicants. 2 of those are the incumbents that wish to be reappointed.
And
And
there,
so-
that's only 2 vacancies, and we received 2 applications for those reappointments. They're already serving in those positions.
Right, we did not receive an application for the 3rd vacancy, so we could entertain a motion. We did not interview the candidates because they're already on the design review board and have expressed a desire to continue. And so I'd ask, is there a motion to reappoint the board members Hamilton and and Hastings to another, are they 3-year terms?
That is correct. They would expire August 31, 2025.
Is there a motion to so reappoint?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? those two members are reappointed for another terms, and I imagine we'll renotice the third vacancy and see if we can get some applicants for that.
Yes.
Okay,
I'm not clear. This is Director Todd. I apologize. I'm not clear that there's 3 vacancies. I think that was a typographical error in your agenda itself. The agenda summary item, I believe, is correct, but I do not have that at my fingertips.
does somebody say there's 2?
Actually.
Summary
Director-
says there's 2 vacancies, 2
Okay.
reappointments.
Well, the action we took is consistent with what we know are the vacancies, so between now and the next meeting, we'll figure out whether there is in fact or not a third vacancy. Thank you for pointing that out, Director Todd. Okay, next is new business item 7C, our schedule for the next meeting. Martin, were you going to cover this or did you want me to?
Doesn't matter. I could do it or you can,
Why don't you go for it since I got the next item?
okay. Well, I'll do it by memory then. So based on the agenda, as you've probably already seen, we received a September 22nd email from our Snohomish County Executive Dave Summers.
Wait,
and-
Martin, I've got that one. We're
Okay.
talking the schedule for the next meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Whether we cancel the meeting on the
Yeah,
22nd.
okay, I'm sorry. So
That's
a regular
fine.
scheduled council meeting is November 22nd of this month, 2022. We're proposing that we move that meeting preferably to November 29th. And we did reach out to all the council members with their suggestions, and I believe Councilmember Allison suggested the 15th. Councilmember Steckler suggested the 29th, and I believe Councilmember Cavallari is out on the 15th. So
I'm fine with the 29th, honestly.
Okay,
so yeah, so the leadership team probably is leaning towards the 29th, given the work we have to do in the next few weeks, but we'll leave it up to council to decide.
yeah, the 22nd is 2 days before Thanksgiving, and this would give staff some more time to prepare for the final budget action on the 29th. And so the motion, if there is one, would be, if everyone's in favor of this, would be to cancel the regular meeting on November 22nd and direct staff to schedule a special meeting for Tuesday, November 29th.
So moved.
Second,
Okay, all those in favor, or any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The schedule is so duly amended. So we will reconvene after this meeting on the 29th. Okay, item D, the Health District Agreement to relinquish property. I'll try to make this abbreviated as I can. The city has an interest in the building that is owned on Rucker Street in Everett by the Health District. I believe our equity interest in the building technically amounts to about $40,000. Not all the cities in Snohomish County, I think Mukilteo might be the outlier for, and I don't know the history of why they weren't involved, but most of the cities have an interest in that building. In 2000, the building is much bigger than what the health district's needs are. And so in 2017, they were proposing to sell the building and use the funds from that to A, find a new location, and B, take whatever was left over, if any, and direct that into their operating budget. Because at the time, the health district historically came to us annually, as it does to all the cities, and asked us to make a per capita contribution to fund their operations. They ended up not pursuing that and nothing became of it. And as you know, this year, the county the health district is merging into Snohomish County. And that has to be completed by the end of the year. So at the end of the year, the health district, which owns title to the Rucker building, will no longer exist. So they want to have the cities quit claim their interest to the county, which conceptually I'm fine with, but I've raised with the county executive, well, the discussion we had before was that money gets used for health related purposes, not going into the general fund of Snohomish County to be used for whatever the 5 council members decide. And so the county does not have, or what has been conveyed to me, they do not have any present intention to sell the Rucker building or move the health district out of that building onto the county campus. But they do agree and have committed in writing that if that were to come to pass at some point in the future, they would dedicate the proceeds from the sale of the building to fund the operations of the health department, I guess is what it'll be called when it's merged. And so the action that we have been requested then to sign a quitclaim deed to convey our interest to Snohomish County in the Rucker building. And so the proposed action in front of us would be to authorize me to execute on behalf of the city the quitclaim deed conveying our interest in the Rucker building to Snohomish County. Questions? Councilmember Paddock?
In what format is that written guarantee? Is that a letter or is that something more contractual?
It is not contractual. We had email and a letter communication from both Dave Summers, the county executive, as well as Ken Klein on his staff.
Thank you.
Was that included as part of the packet? I thought it was.
It was, and there is a contract that was included as well.
Okay, so is that contract to be signed by the mayor or the city manager? If it was
I believe it's city manager and executed by myself. Thank you.
okay, so the motion, if we're so inclined, would be to authorize, as I believe, me to sign the deed and to authorize the city manager to sign the agreement. Is that correct, Martin?
That is correct, Mayor.
Okay. Okay, questions?
And the deed transaction is a quitclaim deed?
That is correct.
Okay.
Conveying our interest with no representations of warranty or warranties as to what we have. It's, you've got given to the county whatever we think we have. Okay, if there's no further questions, do we have a motion?
How do we need to word the motion? Sorry.
The motion, do we have it written out by chance we can put up on screen, or? The motion would be to authorize the mayor to execute a quitclaim deed conveying the city's interest in the Rucker building owned by the Health District of Snohomish County, and authorizing the city manager to execute the interlocal agreement related to that quitclaim deed.
Can I say so moved?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes 5-0. It brings us to our consent agenda for the evening. Item A, approval of checks number 65320 through 65367 and ACH wire transfers in the amount of $158,762.50. The audit committee was myself and Councilmember Allison. Any exceptions?
I haven't been able to review them as of yet. I won't be back.
That's fine. We'll pull items A and B out of the consent agenda and we'll deal with that at the next meeting. So the consent agenda this evening will be item C, City Council meeting minutes of November 1st, 2022. Is there a motion to approve item C of the consent agenda?
Motion to approve item C on the consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, it brings us to reports of the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. We have two reports. The first one is I had a meeting with the Snohomish Isle Executive Director of Snohomish Isle Libraries today. It was a good meeting, just a quarterly meeting, and just update her on where the city's at and what we're doing going forward in the next few quarters. So it went well. Just a general discussion. As we all know, Snow Isle has 23 libraries across Snohomish County as well as Island County. And I think these libraries stretch from as far as Edmonds all the way up through Darrington. The second report is just general report for our Public Works Director. Oh, I'm sorry. Yep.
May I ask a question on that one?
Yes.
Were you guys able to talk about the grant that they received?
We did not.
Oh,
I just provided an update to her, had her ask a Q&A session, but we did not talk about the grant.
From the Gates Foundation?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah. The second is just an update for our Public Works Director regarding the storm that we recently had. Our crews were out there immediately as soon as the windstorm hit, and all the streets are cleared. We're going to have the street sweepers coming out after that sometime soon. The trees are still falling in some of the neighborhoods, and so we're addressing that. So we're working on that right now. So it's going to be some time before we probably completely get those streets swept. And with that, I'll take any other questions.
Any questions for the city manager tonight? Okay, it brings us to our reports. I just have, I think, 3 items. We have our regular mayor's meeting with, 4 items. Mayor's meeting with our county executive Summers tomorrow, so I'll report on that on the 29th. Second, Stephanie and I are working with Martin and Laurel on a legislative agenda, a draft. And so our plan is to bring that to the council in early December with Senator Lovick and Representative Byrd hopefully able to join us. And before then, Stephanie and I and Martin and Laurel hope to sit down with them just to have a discussion, tee up our discussion as a council. So that process is underway. Second, I just want to thank all our veterans. I'm sorry again that I will be missing our festivities on Friday, but I will be under the night. You guys are celebrating. And then finally, since we won't be meeting till the end of the month, I just want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. I hope you have a happy and safe time with your families. With that, Mayor Pro Tem, any report tonight?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple things. First, I do want to point out that Councilmember Allison helped me meet with the city manager to lay out those
Thank you.
council priorities that we will be talking about with the mayor and going over. A second, I do want to acknowledge that there was a school shooting in Seattle today, and that's just heartbreaking, and we should not have to send our children to school to be shot. I also want to take my annual moment to acknowledge that it's election day and that we as women are able to go and vote and sit on this council because of the women that came before us who paved the way for that right. We would not be here if it had not been for all of them, the sacrifices that they made. Next, I had my Mayor Pro Tem meeting, because us South County Mayor Pro Tems have started to have a meeting since the mayors have a meeting today. And I did want to kind of flag for all of us that one of the things that came up in our discussion was the fact that other cities are also having problems with the graffiti and the shopping carts. It's not just us that's going through this. And so it kind of became one of the things that we were all talking about, how to deal with this, that there's a rise with the shopping carts being left everywhere. And they're kind of interested in seeing where our discussions go with that. So I just wanted to make sure I let you all know that. And finally, I had the health board meeting today. They are kind of on the lookout. There are numbers of it's RSV, right? They're going up in our kids. They are seeing the flu numbers rise. They're anticipating that to jump. And they are also anticipating that the COVID numbers are going to go up as we're getting into the winter. So I just want to make sure everybody is aware of that and taking care of your health. And that's it. Thanks.
Councilmember Allison, any report tonight?
No, I have not gone to any meetings this past week other than the one that Pro Tem Vignall mentioned with the legislative agenda for the city. So thank you. Nothing further.
Councilmember Duque,
None.
Councilmember Paddock.
Just another congratulations to the Park and Recs folks that were appointed today. I think a really tremendous diversity of experience and interest and backgrounds, both personal and professional, and looking forward to their contribution. Thank you.
It brings us to audience communication. I'll start in the audience. Ms. Heidel. Name, address, 3 minutes.
Barb Heidel, 1401 144th Place, Southeast Mill Creek. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to each of you, council members, for sticking to your promise to not increase our city taxes, whether you wish to call it retaining with a 1% amount or however you want to word it, not the 1% increase. We're going to be paying taxes more on our property for our annexation of South County Fire, surface water increase, and our assessed value increase, which means an overall property tax increase. So I appreciate very much you not doing your 1% retaining or whatever you want to call it. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb. Anyone online like to address the council this evening? See, nod of heads. Okay.
May I interject and close the loop on the DRB board? I just wanted to let you know, I went online and there are only 2 vacancies, and those were the vacancies we filled tonight, so they're not 3.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Coming back.
Okay, the council will be adjourning to executive session to discuss the status of collective bargaining negotiations. Martin or city attorney, how long do we need? 10 minutes?
10 minutes will do it, and there'll be no action taken afterwards.
Okay, so it's 7. We'll be in executive session till 7:50 and no action will come out. So with that, we'll go into recess.
I'm assuming Connie and I will get magically swooped in there.
I believe so.
Oh, and you too, Grant.
And you too, Grant.
Hi, Naomi.
Hi there. Yeah, Asa will put you in the breakout room.
Thank you. Stephanie, are you at home tonight?
Yes, I'm at home.
Okay, you should get something that says join.
I got it.
Got
Thank you.
Naomi, am I going to be moved to that group as well?
Oh, yes. Why don't you, Asa?
Communication, but if that is the direction, I can move you.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Don't forget to put the executive room in in there as well.
Right.
Or we will all see what's going on.
Hi, Councilmember Steckler. Good to see you. We are, Asa is putting everybody in the breakout room for the executive session.
I think Joe muted the mics. Just give us 1 second.
Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Oh, there we go. Okay, the council concluded its executive session at 7:49, and if there's no objection, we'll adjourn the regular meeting. Everyone have a great Thanksgiving. We'll see you on the 29th.
Have a good Thanksgiving, everyone. Looking forward to Veterans Day.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.